So let me put this question to Dr. Li Mingyan. She's a virologist from China who's investigated the origins of COVID-19. Her findings did not please those in positions of power in Beijing, so Dr. Li had to flee her homeland. Tonight, she joins us from the United States. Well, it's always such a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Li Mingyan. Just trying to understand what the exact situation is inside China, because we're not completely being told what the data is. The WHO also says it doesn't know what exactly is happening. We were talking to you a few weeks back as well, and we were trying to understand how bad the situation actually is. What are you hearing from your sources on the ground? How bad is the situation?
Several weeks ago, and since then until now, still the COVID cases is actually infected majority of Chinese people, and also the death toll is increasing. And the more important is the white lung, the typical pneumonia happened during COVID-19, especially back to early 2020, become worse and worse based on the feedback from hospitals. We are talking about the real number or real death toll. We really cannot have that because first, China government still refuse to give the real data, and they claim only 3 cases of the COVID deaths on 2nd January all over China. However, we know that the funeral place in many places are overloaded, and we see the local people feedback, and they said it's like 5 times or even 10 times more dead bodies every day come to the funeral place.
Let's say what you're saying is correct. More than half of China has got COVID. You're talking about 700 million people, 800 million people actually getting COVID in the last few weeks. And if you're not seeing millions of people dying, then that actually means it's not some scary, new, dangerous variant. It's probably some sort of an Omicron variant or one of the earlier variants, because the fatality rate then isn't that high. If hundreds of millions of people are getting COVID and you're not getting lakhs of deaths or tens of thousands of deaths or millions of deaths, then that means it's not a very dangerous variant.
First, you should know it takes time for the disease develop, especially for the 20 to 60 years old group, right? So first, China government deny all the COVID cases. We only can estimate it based on feedback from patients' family member, hospital, and especially the funeral place statistic. However, now even in the funeral place, government forbids them to talk about the number. We know that they complain they have to burn the bodies, like even a couple of bodies have to mix together to do the cremate. And also the queue to cremate the bodies is long. Even people have to take at least 7 days. This is the data last week. This week, someone said in Shanghai or other cities, even they were told to wait until February to get cremated.
Dr. Li, let me tell you, the reason I'm asking you all of these questions is actually very simple. The rest of the world in the new year is looking at what's happening in China and is worrying, obviously, that what does this mean for us? Is 2023 going to be another year when we're going to be grappling with COVID and horrible new variants are going to come? Or can we relax a little bit? And there are 2 scenarios, as I began by saying. Scenario 1, because China is relaxing now and because it's done away with zero COVID, there will be a large number of cases in China. But the rest of the world does not have to worry too much or panic too much, because these are the same old variants that we have already got some immunity to. So be watchful, but don't panic. The second scenario would be if there is a new variant in China or leads to a new variant in China, which can override our existing immunity, because then there is a real reason to worry. Something else could emerge, something more dangerous than Omicron, more dangerous than Delta. Is there any reason, according to you, to believe that the second scenario, the latter scenario, the scary scenario, could be playing out?
Assume that there are new variants. First is, I say new variant doesn't mean it has to be far away from Omicron. What we say that is because although we talk about lifting of the zero COVID policy, we talk about the vaccine ineffectiveness, however, it cannot explain that all of a sudden people get infected in a very fast speed and also generate such severe symptoms, because just one thing, imaging back to 2020, when people totally has no any immunity against the COVID-19. And then at that time, the situation seems better than at this moment, at least in the cities I know. And the doctors also claim that now it's worse than back to 2020. And also we have to think about China government, why, if it's just the common Omicron, why doesn't the China government allow hospital to give the viral sequence examination? No such PCR testing allowed now. So the thing is, the government insists even back to November, it's just the Omicron, what you know in your country is mild. And they tell you the death is only the cost for China to reopen. And also our government, China government, blame other countries if you want to just do some basic restriction to test the patients to check whether there will be risk for your citizens. And also, when you check the China CDC statement, one thing you should be very aware of, that is they claim there will be the super immune escape variant coming out soon. And that was predicted very well by the Chinese communist scientists. So the government said, don't worry, if it come out later, which can escape all your immunity, China already prepared the drug for you, which will be the only useful mono antibody or drugs, and it's already in manufacturing. So the thing is, we are still working on more information with our sources. But when China tell you that this is nothing you should worry, you should think about that.
Well, Dr. Lee, I think that's something we're certainly going to have to think about. A super immune escape variant is the single biggest nightmare, I think, that everyone has, and that's what people are looking for. Let's certainly hope that that doesn't happen, but we're going to be looking out for that and watching China very closely to see in case that is really what is going to emerge. As I said, there's no evidence that is emerging right now, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that. And we'll keep coming back to you, Dr. Lee, as well, because you do have your finger on the pulse of what's happening inside China. Very difficult for the rest of us to keep an eye on it or try to figure out what's happening inside China. If the WHO cannot, then, certainly the rest of the world is struggling. Thank you so much for joining us.